You're listening to a VerySpatial podcast, episode 750, November 17th, 2024.
Troubles at your door. Come on, let's tell it, time to go. If there's one thing that I know.
Happy Geography Awareness Week and GIS Day.
Happy Geography Awareness Week and GIS Day.
Hello and welcome to our VerySpatial podcast. I'm Jesse.
I'm Sue.
I'm Barb.
And this is Frank.
And this week we're going to be talking to John Nolte, who is the current president of URISA, about their transition to the Geospatial Professional Network. It is GIS Day that this is being released on. So, I don't know. Do we want to have any GIS Day wishes or anything? I don't know.
I'm optimistic. We've been holding events, getting our word out there, and trying to be a part of the community.
We did do a couple really cool events. Dr. Ken Martis, Professor Emeritus from West Virginia University, who is one of, if not the foremost expert on congressional elections. He did the Atlas of Elections. That goes back to the first congressional election in 1783, all the way through, I think, 2020 is the most up-to-date. Maybe 2022 is the most up-to-date they have now in published form. He gave a rundown of the election and showed some really cool maps. That was a pretty exciting event because it was, relatively speaking, hot off the presses. So that was kind of neat. We also did this is the first time I've ever done anything like this, which was pretty exciting. We did a interactive art installation about gerrymandering. I think I mentioned maybe once in the podcast in the past we were putting it together, but it kind of came together, and it's kind of cool. What we've done is there's about 2 or 3 little quads at our institution, and one of them has this big art installation, a couple trees, and we sort of divided that up into a metaphorical town, and people could place house signs that kind of look like, they look like a house. They kind of look like a for sale sign that you would put in your yard or something like that, at least here in the United States. And people could claim territory, and we drew political boundaries. And then this week we've got to go through and move them so the election changes, and they're just voting on, whether the colors of our institution are maroon and white. It's like whether maroon should win or white should win. It's kind of fun.
And I'll say, if you get an opportunity to get some art interns, you really expand the scope of what you do for geography education.
Okay, on to the news. Of course, normal things happening this time of year. ArcGIS Pro 3.4 has been released. ArcGIS Online November updates, which I thought was normally October, but November this year, have been released. A little bit more AI seems to be one of the big things in terms of the desktop apps. It's the general trend towards, having different symbology and working more with 3D tile layers in certain versions and moving into charts and hyperspectral. I forgot about that one. So a little bit more of hyperspectral capabilities, semantic searching, ribbon options, blah, blah, blah. Anything exciting anybody was really excited about in the new update out of curiosity?
Semantic search is kind of cool, but, I like that they've done it. I'm sure it'll suck, and then it'll still get better. So I'm excited about what it can be.
I assume that's taking advantage of Mistral AI. So they're doing some things that are using deep learning and imagery, but they are also getting into the LLMs with Mistral AI, and I assume that's tying into LocateXT and those type of things, as well as I don't know what else I haven't played around with it yet. So yes, that is interesting. Then of course on the ArcGIS Online, lots of things. I will say that there's actually a separate what's new for the web editor. And within that, I just wanted to highlight among the many things that there's new interaction within the table. So you can do multiple tabs within a table. So you don't have to sit there and open one table, then open another table, then go back and open the first table again. So that's nice.
Let me just say that particular feature, I genuinely was like, it was a weird, completely contradictory thing. I was like, oh, that's nice. And it wasn't there before. How did it not be in there before? That was literally the two thoughts I had at the exact same moment.
I had that thought for the distance allocation when they said they added in hiking time and bi-directional hiking time. I was like, that wasn't in there before, because it just makes sense, because hiking trails are such a big thing, worldwide right now.
Yeah, but there's a lot to be, they are slowly slowly being the key term there, getting tools in from the toolbox into ArcGIS Online. So there's still a lot in there that isn't there, but there are things that they are building up. Everything from notebooks being updated with different versions of Python and such to, I don't know, all the different pieces.
Flexbox. The most important thing on the entire list of things is Flexbox. Now,
Be excited about Flexbox. Go.
Yeah, lots of people are going to be like, what? What does that matter? Because there's an entire discipline. You could get a degree in and spend your entire career probably, who knows, after 50 or 60 years, but in doing nothing but CSS and working with things like Flexbox to put things on a page in the way that you want to. And now you can do that with the pop-ups, which is huge if you want to control a nice cartographic user experience thing.
So you're not limited to just a list or going in there and beating on it until it worked for you. Those were kind of your two choices.
Didn't work and the publication date was imminent and you just had to go, oh, this sucks, and then do it. Now you actually have some control and ability to do things, and you can embed stuff and you can make it pretty. And I'm excited about that bit.
Analysis tools coming to Scene Viewer. That's now there, so you don't have to go over to a map viewer, do your analysis, and then come back over to Scene Viewer. I haven't tried it yet, but it's nice to see that it's in the list.
For me, maybe not a little one, because I don't actually have to use it that often, but embed map, I've had some situations recently where that would have come in handy, and now moving forward, I can actually do it.
Well, it just makes it easier. I mean, you could always do it.
Yeah,
but just
now having it right there, especially when you're trying to explain it to somebody.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that's dumb about it is that it was easier because we use Power BI for our more traditional dashboardy stuff at our institution. And it was really annoying because there was a Power BI for ArcGIS.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so much easier to just export the data layer, bring it in Power BI for ArcGIS so you could produce something that you could easily embed. It was just a dumb workflow. So it's so nice that it's in there now.
Student final projects where they, want to create various things. So,
and I think what many people would see as the biggest one is model builder.
Mm.
So the fact that if you are doing more complex, pathways, workflows, that you can build them in there instead of having to go through and do the command line Python in Notebook. So you're getting a different interface, one that a lot of people have been used to in Pro for a long time, on Map before that, and View before that, and well, I guess it kind of started in View. But anyway, we have over 20 years of being able to use Model Builder, and so it's just will be handy to have for those people who are at least used to going there first.
Hey, Esri land, for anyone that's listening, I would be very curious to see what the uptick rate of Model Builder is, because my impression isn't great, but I think I'm probably very wrong about that. So I'm kind of curious.
I mean, how many people use it?
Yeah. I mean, it feels like one of those things that like your analysts just use the tool sets that they have, and then your programmers are like, just give me code and get it out of my way. So I'm just curious. And again, I fully expect myself to be very wrong about that.
I'm sure Frank will put a survey up on the webpage, and then you can go over and answer that, because that'll happen. It won't happen.
Well, survey 123, you can do that now using ArcGIS. Anyway.
But will you? That is the question.
It's a good point. It's a good question.
And of course, AI assistants coming to beta versions of AI assistants to many different apps, including Survey 123, Pro Hub, Instant Apps, Business Analyst. I can see this. I already know people who are doing crazy things that I question with Business Analyst, and giving them an AI will either help them or just make it that much weirder. So we'll see how that goes.
Is it both? It's both.
It's probably both.
Next up in the news, this is just a little news item that I thought was kind of interesting. There's a company called Gamma Technologies, and what they do is they do augmented reality for construction. And this is an area that I felt, was probably arguably the first or second thing that people thought of whenever they thought of AR, when it first started launching out, I don't know, 10 years ago, whenever it was. This notion that, fixing things was the first, so you can hold up an augmented reality and see what an engine's supposed to look like and all that stuff. And the second is, construction. What's this thing going to look like? What are the pieces that we need to think about? And the thing I think is kind of interesting about this is Autodesk, who obviously has a lot of interest in construction industry and architecture and that sort of thing, are infusing gaming technology with a whole bunch of capital to expand their abilities and their holdings and the ability to do some construction. I just thought it was a neat little article, and it's a reminder that AR is still at some level alive and well, even if we don't necessarily use it all the time.
I can see this being really useful because I don't know of many of the younger professionals in construction that aren't using 3D buildings in some way with the construction sites they're working on. So it's going to be pretty cool to see this in place.
And I think that this is an area, though, that maybe struggles to find like a broader use case. So the HoloLens, I think especially the HoloLens 2, there were some apps that were specifically for this. I think there wasn't even a GIS app that would look at infrastructure below the ground, but the HoloLens 2 has essentially had its swan song. Microsoft in October announced that it was discontinuing production, and they're out of that space. So seeing, some of these companies and people take up the torch, maybe we'll still get something more magical in the future.
But we're still waiting for the hardware to support it. So it's nice, but with the loss of the HoloLens, and you might still be able to buy the HoloLens, but they announced the end of production at the beginning of October. So Leap Motion, I don't think ever made it out for general use. The Meta headsets have passed through, but they're not really meant to be worn as you're walking around doing stuff. So it's a question mark of, besides your phone or tablet, how is this really going to be used? So we'll see.
Next up in news, this is a kind of interesting news item. Microsoft has launched something they're calling NASA Earth Copilot. So essentially what it's doing is taking all the satellite imagery, primarily I think it's satellite imagery, data that NASA has collected over decades, and it's making it available for use in Copilot. Now, if you haven't used Copilot, that's obviously Microsoft's, not obviously, but it is Microsoft's sort of ChatGPT interface connected to all of its suite of tools and technologies and that sort of thing. They're doing this because, as they said, that, analyzing this stuff, it's kind of funny. It's some of the stuff that's been talked about in the geospatial literature since the 90s. That analyzing this stuff and using it requires expert systems and expert knowledge and expert training. The idea behind Copilot is to make it more accessible for people so they can actually start utilizing this information in their artificial intelligence driven queries and interactions and things like that. It looks like to me from the news item that it's primarily, because I keep talking about geospatial technology, but it seems to be that it's primarily raster based. So it's more or less the satellite imagery based stuff, not vector based, which a lot of us in the ARC world, of course, are used to thinking about. But NASA does have that type of data, so hopefully that does get included. And I am kind of curious if they start including at some level some of the things like census data and whatnot, intermixing with this.
So it looks like what you're doing is you're interacting with the output from the existing automated systems that have been set up by NASA. So you have, imagery that's coming in. They have existing classification tools that are going through and running on that. And then you can query the data from that, is my interpretation without having played with it. Because, of course, Copilot, OpenAI, whatever you're talking about is that back end is an LLM. So, this foundational model can deal with text, but there's no real good AI models that I'm aware of yet that are really good at spatial data. So I think it's more about aggregation and understanding the relationship between data of values and data of location. But I now have to go play with this just to see.
It's kind of exciting, and you can see where the maybe the hope ends up being bigger than the reality. But who knows? Could be cool. You have to play with it and figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much in these classification systems, which we can call machine learning, deep learning, whatever you want to refer to them as, and they're already being done with data that's coming down automatically. They're basically using this to both run these models and to continue to train the models. But, how we interact with that data is one of the big question marks, I think, for this whole idea of the geo AI. It's like we have the machine learning, deep learning that gives us analysis on imagery especially, and we have the LLM foundational models that give us the ability to interact with text. And I think this is kind of looking for that bridge.
And finally, in the news, for those of you in remote sensing, so it's a good segue. If you were not aware, the request for proposals is out for the 2025 to 2029 Landsat science team. So if you're an expert in the field of remote sensing, you and your organization, and you would like to be part of the group that actually shapes the future of Landsat, as well as supporting ongoing operations currently of Landsat 8 and 9. And the other big thing going on is the development, of course, of Landsat Next, which is scheduling for launch in somewhere between 2030 and 2031. And so if you click on the link, there's a RFP with instructions. Interested applicants, so make sure that you submit everything by December 17th of this year. And it's a chance again to be part of a really, really successful remote sensing mission.
And that is all the news.
Happy to be joined today by John Nolte, who is the Director of Enterprise IT at Denver Water. And today we're talking to you as your position as President of URISA and, of course, Geospatial Professional Network. So thanks for joining us today.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for having me. Absolutely. I'm excited about this.
It is one of those things that to change branding, it's not something that's new. It's something that's, I think, been coming for a long time with this transition from the Urban and Regional Information Systems Association to Geospatial Professional Network, which you guys are moving to in the near future. So can you tell us a little bit, just to ground everybody, to make sure everybody remembers, what URISA is/was?
Sure. So URISA, of course, the Urban and Regional Information Systems Association. We started out in, 64, 63 years ago, kind of representing the urban and regional side of GIS. And so we were one of the first groups that kind of formed around that technology. Actually helped to, one of the greatest things about it was it actually helped to bring GIS to the main front of a lot of the technology at the time. And so we've been established for a long time, been around for a while, been kind of an advocate for the GIS professional as it is for, quite some time now. And so we basically, have been doing a lot of this work where we've been doing a lot of the instruction, a lot of the leadership and management. We have the GISPro conference, we have the valuation, Valtech, the LEAP conference, which is the next gen 911 folks. There's a lot of different areas that we've been representing and really kind of taken on that whole profession, the GIS profession. We even actually originally had come up with working with the GIS CI as part of the GISP certification. URISA was one of the kind of the founding groups of that particular GISP. And so we've been doing a lot for the profession over the last 60 plus years. And we felt that at this point, it was kind of time for us to grow with the profession, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the journal over the years, you can kind of see that inflection point in the 90s where it goes from being more parcel plats, cartography to just GIS growing and growing. And by the time we get to 2000s, it's, exploded as more that than the traditional planning that URISA began with. So you can see that transition. And of course, the renaming of GISPro for the conference a few years ago kind of heralded it as well.
Right.
What is it that now that we're seeing this transition that the Geospatial Professional Network is looking at in terms of how you're going to address the community? Because of course we have the Vanguard cabinet, we have, the traditional board and those type of things, the membership and people who have been going to the conference for years. So how is this transitioning, which of course is bringing a lot of the existing ideas URISA with it, and the direction that you see this going in the future?
I guess I should start back when we started this conversation back in Baltimore about 3 years ago now. And it was really kind of during one of the board meetings after the GISPro conference there. And we started talking about rebranding and what it meant, and tried to get an idea of how we could do this, and if it was maybe we do the same thing with it that Esri had done with just using the acronym or actually going through a full name change. And it was during that conversation, we really started to look at what our value was to the rest of the GIS profession, and trying to figure out what that value proposition is. And basically in the marketing standpoint, what's your competitive advantage? And we saw that as what we've been doing all this last 20 years or so was really focusing on the profession, kind of what I was saying earlier, is focusing on how we would grow as professionals throughout our career. And so supporting everybody along that career path. And when you first come in as the Vanguard cabinet, you have that new network, you're learning how to grow as a new GIS professional, all the way to the GIS Leadership Academy, which we also rebranded. It was the ULA at one point, the URISA Leadership Academy, and now it's the GIS Leadership Academy. So it's still URISA GIS Leadership Academy. But we started looking at all of that as how we transitioned from that. And I feel that even in the last 20, 25 years, that the GIS profession has changed quite a bit. Well, as you were saying, we're looking at the maps and the cartography, and all of that has kind of transitioned more to that data science, data analytics, using the data behind all of the applications that are being developed now. And really it's transitioned from that. We're still in the work of doing maps. We're still doing a lot of that part of it, but we're also seeing a lot more in the realm of that data analytics. And I feel that we're not going to lose the information systems part of the title, but we're going to grow into something that's more holistic, into the greater GIS profession, and adapting to those that aren't represented now. And so when you ask somebody what URISA stands for, and that they go into that urban and regional side of things, it's, do we correctly represent all people in the GIS profession? And we do. And that's, as we, even with our namesake, we do represent all of that, but we felt that actually transitioning to something more in the Geospatial Professional Network was more apt to what we are doing, and kind of growing that profession, growing the GIS professional at all stages of the career. And so we looked at that as a different approach to that. So again, going into the Vanguard, looking at the chapters, even so what the chapters represent, what the different groups represent in the organization, and seeing how we can really address all the needs that we have and represent all of the people that are involved in this. And so we were finding that we'd go to the GISPro, and I can tell you my story. It started about 10 years ago. I'd gotten involved in URISA back in 1995 at a conference in San Francisco. And over the years, I saw the value in going to the conferences, but I kind of lost track of it as I got more involved in my career and started getting more into the consulting business. And when I saw that, I didn't really, I saw the network of URISA and I saw the value of it, but I didn't really see what it was for the education side of things. And it wasn't until the 2014 when I went to the New Orleans conference, the GISPro, where I started to meet the folks there. And it was, again, I was still a consultant at that time. I was a defense contractor, and I didn't really see the value in the technical side of the presentations, but I met some of the best people that I've ever met in that network, and the people that were helping me at that stage of my career. And they really connected to me with a lot of the people. They got me involved in the organization, and then that kind of took off, and I've been involved in the organization ever since. And so I feel that, having that transition for me in that change in my career has launched a lot of the last few years of the work that I've been doing. And I became an instructor for the GLA. I was the conference chair for a period of time, and I'm now the president. And so seeing the value in the network and the people that are involved is really where the URISA and the Geospatial Professional Network has succeeded. It's really been that level of expertise that I know that I can call anybody up in my network and get an answer to a question that I have, or somebody would find that answer or find somebody to connect me with. And that was the beautiful part of that, is that the people were there always trying and willing to help, and because they're so passionate about their career, they're so passionate about the work that they're doing, that just like I want to give back to the organization and to the community. They're all the same. They're all very similar in that aspect. And I feel like that's what we're representing now. That's what the GPN now represents, is that the passion in that the GIS professional networking part of it.
which of course is, whenever you think of the GISPro as the conference and the other ones as well, like the Leadership Academy and LEAP and others, we talk about conference, but really the conference part of the conference isn't necessarily the most important part. It's the connections, like you're saying, those networking connections that we make while we're at the conferences, whether it's something, the size of the Esri user conference where you're talking about thousands of people there, or, the small local conference that you're going to that's just for your county. It's those connections that networking really offers. And so that's one of the reasons, of course, I'm excited about the name change, is that reflection. Now, the other side of the networking, of course, is the fact that URISA was not a body. It is many bodies. And in fact, we recently had the talks about the changes to membership between local and national membership and those type of things. So can you talk a little bit about how this is working in the context of those regional and local member organizations?
Yeah. And so what we found, and there's kind of a couple different parts to that question too, or the answer to that question is, what we found is that during COVID, it kind of brought us closer together in some ways because we're able to have these types of conversations online. And I feel that the chapter model that we currently have has really served us well. And we really do a good job on the local level of having those chapters and the involvement in the different groups that are part of that. But we don't, as a national organization or international organization, have a good grasp of what those groups do on a daily basis. And I feel that having this, we're really going to focus on a lot of that. We're going to focus on how we can bring the caliber of the work that we do on the national level to these local groups, because we know a lot of the work is being done in these local groups. We have connections through the universities. We have connections through a lot of the local chapters that are doing community service work. We're even my chapter, the Rocky Mountain chapter, which was a very strong chapter here at one point, we had local conferences that we would do. And we're combining actually next year, which I'm really excited about, is the GIS in the Rockies and the GISPro conference here in Denver. And so we're trying to have that where we're bringing all of the benefits of being a national, international member to the local chapter again. And so we're looking at how we can bring more webinars. And we've increased that over the last few years. And so the name change and the change of that marketing perspective to the Geospatial Professional Network is also going to trickle down to the local chapters in a way, because we're going to try to make it stronger for that. We're going to try to make sure that the international organization has the support of the chapters. So we're doing a full rebrand of the chapters as well. And I feel that that's going to be something, we went through that aspect of what you were saying, connecting all of the chapters to the one brand. And this is going to even formalize that. So we're going to make sure that it's one unique brand, but we're also going to offer all these new ideas and new techniques for chapters to benefit from this branding. One of the ways that we're looking at is developing communities too. And so instead of having, the chapter model where you have regional, we'll have technical side of things. So people can join a community based on what their interest is. And you can still have a regional community. So the Rocky Mountain chapter can still have a regional community, but we can also have communities of practice like utilities. And so my group and the water professionals, we're going to have a utility community that's going to come together and do webinars and have talks. And maybe occasionally through the chapter, we'll have mappy hours or other aspects that we can bring on the local level and have it all solidified through that national, international organization, the Geospatial Professional Network.
And so that, I think, then takes us to the question of the pitch, the elevator pitch for those who are not currently URISA members or have, like me, wandered from the annual membership dues and, are wondering, okay, well, what is the direction for URISA that's going to bring me back into which I'm already sold on it, but
yeah.
For the others, what's the elevator pitch?
That's a good question. It's really just the community that you're developing. And so again, going back to that, helping at all stages of your career, we have a mentoring program where we get people involved. And I'm actually a mentor. I was a mentee at one point. We have the Vanguard Cabinet. We have all these different groups that basically can help you along during your career path. And I feel that, again, when people are stuck in different areas, and just like I was, URISA, the GPN now can help you with that. And so being a member of the Geospatial Professional Networks will excel your career and excel your network to the folks that, even if you're just coming to the conference and being, I have a lot of good friends in the organization now, and we share all our resources. We share all our conversations. We have that leadership and management. There's people that I have learned so much from over the last 10 years that I use in my daily work. I mean, there's techniques that I've learned from different members and different people that I use on a daily basis, different types of techniques like the Kanban charts and the lean coffee and the Pomodoro technique, all those things that I've learned through this network of friends and people and colleagues. So to me, it's really the network that's being developed here. And again, I sell all my folks on that too, when they're getting into the different areas of their career and trying to figure out where they are. And it's the same thing with the geospatial industry. I think we've changed so much that it's hard to find a place for people to be and to people to have that commonality. And the Geospatial Professional Network has done that for me, has been able to be that bridge for me for those areas where I'm stuck in my career or stuck to go to the next level. There was a question a few years ago for me when I was trying to look at whether I would go back to do my master's program and what I would do it in. And I asked the forum, URISA Connect, the Geospatial Professional Network Connect, now GPN Connect, what they recommended and just asking advice for that. And the few of the folks were saying, well, I knew at that point that I didn't necessarily want to do a master's in GIS because I was already in the leadership and management portion of my career. And so somebody was saying that maybe you should look into an MBA. And I did. And I finished my MBA last year. And I really felt that was what led to this next position. I actually just became the director of enterprise IT about 3 months ago now. And coming from GIS manager to the director of IT is a pretty big leap in a lot of ways. But going back to that conversation that I had with the group in the forums was really kind of very helpful for me to figure out where I wanted to be in that next level of my career. And I would say that was really a pivotal point for me. And that was directly attributed to my involvement in this organization.
On the greedy side for me, we want people like you in that position because, of course, the more people from GIS that we have as the director of IT, the more that we know that the IT is going to include good GIS. So that's always exciting whenever we do see people in those positions. Coming from an education institution, of course, I have to ask the question because there's this long-term connection to students. And, we've been talking about the different levels that URISA and GPN support in terms of people's careers. It's one of those things that, we know why students should be involved, but getting them to understand why they should be involved in organizations like this. I mean, we've talked about the networking, we've talked about knowledge building, we've talked about all these things, but do you have a different spin that you can give to students out there as to, why these organizations are so important in a world in social media, how going from social media to, a physical organization or an online organization even is important? Any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that in our organization, we really strive to bring in those students and the members that are just being introduced to GIS. And we do, of course, the career building, so resume workshops and things like that. But it's also just getting people involved in some of the conferences that we do. We have the GISPro. We do a student competition where we have local groups that are involved in the area, either in the high school level or in the university level, where we bring in the students to do a poster presentation or even just a story map or something like that. And that really, they get to meet the folks that have been working in the profession already to learn more about it. And so even with what I do here for Denver Water, having an apprentice, I have an apprentice that didn't know anything about GIS when she came in here. And having those resources and having somebody that understands those resources really helped her to formulate what she wanted to do. And I'm really proud. It's kind of one of those proud moments where she was going to go into cybersecurity and data analytics, data science, and now she's doing a minor in GIS and she's pursuing that part of it. So she came from high school right into college and she's doing a minor now. And that is, to me, just a really good feeling for how we are fostering that in the younger folks, the people that are coming up in students. But we also understand there's a lot of research being done. And so we want to connect those people with the resources that they need for them to do the research. And so we're always constantly looking for additional areas of expertise and trying to make sure that we're connecting those people with that too. And so coming in, I mean, I know in my career, and this was back in 1994, I didn't even really know what GIS was at the time. It was a very small portion of what I was doing. I would have loved to have had somebody that would be able to mentor me, to get me to that next level and to see the value in what I was doing at that time. And I kind of went through a couple different portions of my career, and knowing what I know now and how much I love GIS and all the things that I've done with it, I would have loved to have had somebody that kind of helped guide me on that path.
Especially in the command line days. Definitely.
Yeah, right.
I think as we're kind of heading towards the end of the interview, one of my big questions is, what is the transition that you see for the online materials? There's, of course, tons of resources, whether for students or for early career or for leadership and admins, that are available on the URISA website. And what is the timeline for kind of transitioning a lot of that URISA Connect to GPN Connect and those type of things coming up?
Yep. So we hired a consultant as part of this, and we're hoping that by the end of this year, maybe a little bit later, that we'll have all the materials to use as a brand package. So again, with the chapters and everything else too, we're hoping to have all that as a brand package. And once we get all that material, we're going to start that transition. We're looking to have most of what we're seeing as a transition to be done, and this is hopefully, and I'm saying this, by the next GISPro. And what we're really trying to do, we know we're going to give chapters a little bit more time, but we really want to try to get the transition from our website, the materials, the GIS Leadership Academy, GISPro, all of those materials that we have under a similar brand and a brand package that we have developed. And we want to make sure that we're trying to do that. We don't want to rush it into it, of course. We want to make sure that we get everything dialed in and really done correctly. We have a number of different URLs for the websites. So we're going to be discussing that with our consultant over the next couple of months, and then trying to transition early in the first and second quarter, and then have it hopefully completed by GISPro in Denver in October.
And this is a good place to start people thinking about GISPro for next year. So as you mentioned, it's going to be in Denver. You're co-locating with GIS in the Rockies, I think you said, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So I assume that the call for presentations and such will be due in the early next year.
Yes, and we probably put it out sometime in January, and usually it's the March timeframe where we get to it, where we have a close out, and then we start putting the program together. We're super excited about it. We have a really, really good, strong geospatial network here, and I'm excited about hosting it.
Yeah, I mean, from Colorado Springs up to Fort, it's just an amazing, concentration of geospatial technologies, from universities to private companies to government organizations in that one area. It's just always surprising me whenever I think about it. And so with Denver, there's so many conferences that happen in Denver in March and April, which are just terrible choices. It is awesome to see this in October. I mean, we did see recently some snow up in the area, but that's late October into November, whereas you're pretty safe. You don't have to worry about snow too much, getting snowed in for an October conference. So a great time of year to be able to see that conference in the area.
Yeah, the weather is going to be perfect. It'll be that time of year that, and you never know. I mean, you can see snow at that time, but it usually snows one day and it's 70 degrees the next day. And so even if it is snow, and I know a lot of people actually will prefer that because they come from areas that are warmer and they're getting off that tail end of summer and coming to this area. And we had like I said, the GLA was here last year, and we had the tail end of the GLA. It was beautiful all week, and the last day we had snow, and everybody was so excited about it to actually come out and see both of the extremes, where it was 70 and then it was nice, and it wasn't even that cold. It was probably in the 30s and snowing. And so the next day it was bright and sunny again. And that's what we love about Denver.
It's an upside, but I was there at an AAG conference I guess probably 2 decades ago now, but the last day snowed. And of course, trying to get 8,000 people onto planes when all the planes are grounded so October is better. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to kind of highlight about the transition, about GPN in general?
No, other than that, I mean, we're not going to change the mission of URISA to become the GPN. It's going to be the same mission that we have. We really feel strongly about the transition. The Geospatial Professional Network represents more of us than the original URISA, even though URISA is such a great organization, and urban and regional kind of lost its meaning over the years. And it's not necessarily anything to do with the organization. It's just because the way the profession has changed. We've seen a big transition in the profession. And we know that at this point that changing to a new name is a risk. Then we understand that, but we also understand that we're changing with the profession. We're changing with the GIS professionals and how they represent themselves, and feel that it's going to be a really smooth transition. And we're really excited about that.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate you having me on here.
On to the Events Corner. As always, we encourage you to check out these events and others in your neighborhood. In your neighborhood. In your neighborhood.
First up, Geo Week, taking place February 10th through the 12th in Denver, Colorado.
Commercial UAV Expo Europe, taking place April 8th through 10th in Amsterdam.
And their call for academic papers is currently open.
And GISPro is taking place October 6th to the 9th in Denver, Colorado. Lovely little place.
Of course, if you'd like us to add your event to the podcast, send us an email to podcast@veryspatial.com.
If you'd like to reach us individually, I can be reached at sue@veryspatial.com.
I can be reached at barb@veryspatial.com.
You can reach me at frank@veryspatial.com. Oh, and I'm also on Blue Sky now. So if you go to Nojapar on Blue Sky, you can follow me there.
As am I. I'm also on Blue Sky. Lurking right now largely, but I'm there.
I'm available at Kinda Spatial everywhere except for that place that used to be called Twitter, which I haven't been on for a long time. And you can find all of our contact information over at veryspatial.com/contacts.
As always,
We're the folks from Very Spatial.
Thanks for listening.
And we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Troubles at your door. Oh, come on, let's tell it, time to go. Oh, if there's one thing that I know, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it through. One step becoming two. 'Cause as long as we are breathing, there's reason for believing. We're gonna make it through. There's nothing we can't do. There's nothing we can't do.